My name is Diane Dimond. I am a veteran journalist, author, syndicated columnist. My expertise is crime and justice issues. I have been on television for years, various syndicated programs and various networks. And I first came in contact with this stalker in June of 2014. I wrote a syndicated column about a shooting, a mass killing at the University of California at Santa Barbara in Isla Vista. And the shooter I described as being a sick man, a man with a sick mind, a demented, murderous, conniving mind. The facts of the case made that abundantly clear. He stabbed his roommates, he went to the university, he ran people down with his car, he got out and shot people. It was a horrible crime. Almost immediately after that column ran, I started getting emails, and he told me that I was guilty of discrimination, that he too was a man that fell under the Americans with Disabilities Act because he had a mental disorder. And he began this letter writing campaign to get the column removed from every newspaper that ran it and every news website that ran it. And all in an attempt to smear my name because I had called this killer sick. And he too was sick. And how dare I do that? He threatened to file a lawsuit under the Americans with Disabilities Act and said that the government would pay for it because he too was disabled with his mental disorder. Of course, that never came to pass at all. As I go through and tell you this story, I want to make it clear that this is just my opinion. I have no psychological training. I can only take this man at his word when he writes to me and says, Diane, I am mentally ill. One of the spookiest things he put in one of the many, many, many rambling emails I got was the line, and this is a quote, I am a potential mass shooter. Here's another quote. Diane, I am mentally ill. I am physically disabled as well. My life is a living hell. I am a prime candidate for committing a mass gun shooting, and with the PTSD, I am easily triggered. Well, this was frightening, and because I lived and worked in California for a long time, I knew a lot of law enforcement officials. And I called a specific detective who was with the Special Victims Unit. And I told her about this. I sent her the emails, many, many emails. I got 35 emails from this stalker in one day. And I talked to the detective, and I said, this guy sounds like a powder keg. You know, I just want you guys to know. And the response back was, well, he has the freedom of speech right. And he can say whatever he wants. He has not committed a crime. That's kind of frightening to me. After that, he continued to engage with me, and I tried to write him back to be reasonable, and I quickly realized this was not a reasonable person. He wrote letters to prominent people who I had interviewed, Alan Dershowitz, a famous lawyer, to the filmmaker Michael Moore, to my former bosses at NBC and MSNBC. He wrote to my boss at Court TV, all with the mind to get me fired. I then got an email from the stalker who said to me, you know, I have big friends at Facebook and Google, and you know all that stuff I put online about you? Well, if you pay me X numbers of dollars, thinking it was $5,000, maybe it was $10,000, I will make sure that all of that awful stuff I said about you is taken offline. Well, it was crazy. It was nonsense. I wasn't going to pay him any money. I continued to watch this man online because I thought it was wise to know where he was, and I realized that he traveled across the country a lot. And then I started to hear from other people who noticed he was mentioning me online, and they all told me similar stories. They were victims of this cyber stalker. They had been, he had tried to extort money from them to go away. He Among the victims that I heard from was a former lieutenant with the LAPD who had turned in to be a private investigator. It was frightening what had happened to that man. The stalker found out where he lived, took a picture of his house, put it up online. You don't do this to a law enforcement official who has put many, many people away, and some of whom may be looking for retribution. He attacked the private detective's wife for her business activities, which are too long to go into. When this man moved to another state, he found out the address there and put that address in a picture of the house online. This is a kind of bizarre behavior and threatening behavior that he has done to me since 2014 in June. So by October 2015, I had had enough. I had talked to the LAPD. I had talked to my local cops. I live in New York State, just saying, hey, this guy is weird. He's after me. They took a report. I talked to my friends at the FBI. I talked to people at Secret Service. And everyone said, it's good that you've told us about him, but there's nothing we can do. I learned about many, many other victims during this time from June 2014 to October 2015. There was a woman who was a homeless advocate in California. Well, this cyberstalker declared that he was a homeless advocate and much better than her, and he literally ran her out of the state of California. There was a filmmaker in the state of Ohio, an Emmy-nominated filmmaker, and they began a back and forth online, and fights were picked, and then horrible things were said about this filmmaker, completely untrue things. And when I looked back at all of this, I saw the trail of destruction that this cyberstalker was leaving. He attacked the activist Erin Brockovich, who everyone knows is an environmental activist. And then I began to piece it together. He wants to be an accomplished person. So he attached himself to the filmmaker in Ohio and said he was better than him. He attached himself to Erin Brockovich, said, I'm better than you, attacked her right-hand man. He attacked me, specifically, calling himself a gonzo journalist, and that he was a better investigative reporter than me. Some of the things this cyberstalker was saying about the Ohio filmmaker, they were crimes that were very serious, and I investigate these kind of crimes for a living. If this Ohio filmmaker had been involved in any of those activities that the stalker said he had, I would have known. I do not want to have any alliances with someone who, well, in the words of the cyberstalker, was a serial killer, a pedophile, a murderer. I mean, these were very serious things put out online to live forever. And you see, this is the big problem. This man puts this stuff out online about all of us, and we can never get it deleted. It lives forever. And some of us, he is accused of serious felonies. Me, he is accused of very serious journalistic breaches, which there's no worse thing you can accuse me of. I've spent my life for decades building a reputation of being a dogged investigative reporter. And when there's some person online writing things like he's been writing about me, that I'm a liar, I plagiarize things, I make stuff up, I go into cahoots with, quote, the bad guys, that damages my reputation. And the hell of it is, law enforcement and attorneys and even the FBI tell me I have absolutely no recourse. This is not right. The laws need to catch up with what's happening online. This guy has left a trail of victims, frustrated, angry, humiliated, and we have no recourse. One of the claims to fame, I suppose, if you want to put it that way, that I have, is that I first broke the Michael Jackson child molestation story back in late 1994. I followed that case for many years. I then rebroke that story when a second boy came forward charging child molestation in 2013. I covered the criminal trial, and I wrote a book about my decade and a half of work on that case called Be Careful Who You Love Inside the Michael Jackson Case. So this cyberstalker decides now that I'm not responding enough to him because I decided to completely stop responding to him because that's what he wanted, the attention. He began to malign my work on the Michael Jackson case. It's kind of ridiculous because my book is seen as one of the definitive works about that man's life, about Michael Jackson's life, and his downfall into these charges of child molestation. To this day, he repeatedly calls me a liar, that I colluded with the district attorney, that I paid people off, that horrible things that are designed to ruin my reputation. Like he tried to ruin the reputation of the Ohio filmmaker. Like he tried to ruin the reputation of the detective in California and his wife. This is what this cyberstalker does. And I've seen it over and over again. Another way this cyberstalker had decided to discredit me online was to talk about a book that I wrote on the White House gatecrashers, if you remember that story, Tark and Mikhail Salahi. They allegedly snuck into the White House for a state dinner. I went down and virtually lived with the Salahis for a period of time and then wrote this book called Cirque de Salahi. To make a long story short, the marriage between Tark and Mikhail did not last very long. She contacted me privately to help her get out of that marriage. And so Tark Salahi does not like me. Okay, I can live with that. But now I notice this cyberstalker had moved to the state of Virginia. And who does he seek out and befriend? Tark Salahi. And he begins to post pictures of he and Tark's new wife and everybody having a good old time, drinking wine and eating big steaks. And it was obvious to me it was a power signal to me to say, I know who one of your foes is, and I have taken up with him, and now you have two people against you, Diane. You know, again, it doesn't bother me much, but this is the kind of tactics that he does. This cyberstalker is not a stupid man. It doesn't take much to Google my name and see what books I've written and see how you might be able to use that against me. And that's exactly what he does. He finds a person's weak spots and then attacks. One of his victims is a little overweight, so he calls him fatty all the time. He just has a way of getting under your skin like a deer tick and spreading poison. So, putting all that together in my mind in October 2015, I'd had about a year and a half of this, I wrote another column. And I never use his name, but I wrote about him under the title, My Stalker, My Warning. And I wrote it because I really wanted to chide law enforcement. I told the stories that I've just told here about the filmmaker and the homeless advocate and several other people and said, why is it that all of us have our lives upended and upset by this man, and you people can do nothing? He's spreading slander, libel, lies. He's trying to extort money from some of us. Stalking is a crime. Why isn't cyberstalking a crime? I am really worried that his more recent communications online show that his behavior is escalating. I'll give you some examples. He wants to insert himself into news events, and nobody even suggests that he's been involved. But I'll give you an example. There was a shooting in Maryland at the offices of the Capital Gazette in the newsroom in Annapolis, Maryland. 5 people were killed. Especially to me as a journalist, that's frightening. Journalists are being hunted down for doing their jobs. As that story played out online, our cyberstalker decided to insert himself into that story. And he wrote emails, something like, journalists are scum, they're like the dirt on my heel, but don't worry, I'm not going to get a gun and shoot any of them. Whoa. To me, my antenna went up, I got goosebumps, and I thought, oh my God, is that exactly what he's thinking about doing? Here's another example. There was a missing girl, a co-ed at the University of Iowa. It was top of the news on every national newscast for days and days. A 20-year-old, beautiful brunette girl missing. Went out for a jog, never seen before. And he happened to be in Iowa at the time and made this big announcement that, no, don't look at me. I'm not the one. I'm not involved in her missing person. It's like, what is he trying to do? Attract attention? Is he trying to get the police to come and question him? Is he trying to get the victims, his cyber-stalking victims, to say something incriminating online like, yeah, maybe you better go look at him. He's nuts. Well, none of us want to engage with him. We don't engage with him, yet he consistently accuses us of engaging with him. Another example of how he likes to insert himself into controversial situations comes from his wandering around the country. He will frequently, for some reason, post pictures of the enormous meals that he eats at these pretty nice restaurants, frankly. And then he will complain about how his waitress or a busboy or someone else in the restaurant confronted him because they have seen things that we have written about him online. Now, what kind of mind even thinks like that? You're sitting having a good meal in a good restaurant, and did that really happen? Somebody came up and saw something that Diane Dimond wrote on the internet about him? He has an insatiable and unquenchable need to have attention, to be important, and to be smarter than everyone else. So he picks fights with people who are accomplished in some sort of twisted way that will bring him some attention and fame and fortune. He adopts personas that go online and praise him. In other words, he's praising himself, but under an assumed name. But in these messages of praise, he reveals that it's really him talking about himself. Again, I don't think he's a stupid man, but I do think that he loses track of exactly who he is at any given moment. I don't want to give any specific names, but there's a man with alliterative initials that will write something like, boy, isn't that a great guy? And, is doing this and is doing that. And then the message goes into a first person where he says, yes, and I also did this and this and this and this. So I do wonder about his grasp on reality at times. For anyone who has become a victim, do yourself a favor, do not engage. My best advice is to don't do that. And in fact, block him. If you can block him from your Twitter feed or your Facebook, that's my best advice. I have to tell you, I have really struggled over all these years, since 2014, and his constant attacks on my reputation and my work and my journalistic ethics, to not get online and just tell him, give him my mindful. But I don't do it. I used to, and I struggle not to do it every single day. Every single time he puts my name in one of his long diatribe screeds out there accusing me of something else. But don't do it. I once had a local police officer, I live in a tiny little community, say to me, no, we can't take your report because we see you have answered him. You have engaged with him on Facebook. So that may come back to bite you legally if you decide to answer him back. I mean, it's human nature to stand up for yourself. But this cyber stalker, in my opinion, is so off the wall and so conspiratorial in his mindset. He'll make up stuff about you. You can't even believe he figured out how to say it. So don't engage. I've had hundreds and thousands of email contacts with him, Twitter contacts with him, Facebook contacts with him. And we can't do something about years and years of cyber harassment from a man who admits that he has a mental illness. So, of course, he apparently reads my columns and he realized I was talking about him. This set in motion a whole new line of attack. And it became a vast conspiracy. Since I knew about the Ohio filmmaker and I knew about the homeless advocate in California and I knew about the detective and women at a hostel that he had tried to extort money from in 2013, we must all be involved in a big, huge conspiracy to get him. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. We all sort of banded together and contacted each other on the internet to say, you're a victim, I'm a victim. Do you know where this guy is? Do I need to be afraid of him? I see he has a police record. He has a record for domestic assault. Is he violent? Should I worry? Should I get a gun? You know, we began to communicate with each other, but not in a conspiracy to bring him down. Rather, it was in a conspiracy to keep ourselves safe. In February 2018, after about 4 years of this man's harassment, constant harassment, there was born this thing called MBVR online. It is a repository for all of this cyber stalker's nonsense. His lies, his threats, his extortion attempts, every message, every police record, every website he puts up, every handle that he uses, every fake name, it's all in one location. And I'm telling you, that is going to be invaluable when this cyberstalker finally explodes. Because law enforcement will not be able to say, gee, we didn't know, because it's all right there. And I encourage anybody, keep every single communication with the headers involved, with the time, the date, and send it in, because it will be cataloged and kept. I believe that he has victimized so many of us, and many of us multiple times a day and multiple victims in a day, that he has lost track of who we are. He has no concept that we're as smart as he is, and we are saving his communications. And now they're being cataloged in one location. And I think that this has made a bit of an impact on him. And he sees, we're not just taking it and forgetting about you until the next time you write back. We're keeping track. And it's going to be a roadmap to stopping this behavior. He cannot say he didn't do it. He can't say it, wait for us to see it, and then delete it offline. Mark my words, we are going to use it someday. And frankly, I hope, get him the mental health treatment he needs. The threats and the taunts and the criticisms and the vile things that come out of this man's mouth, I want to think are just bluster. And mostly they are. I'll give you an example. Another one of my columns upset him at one point, and frankly, I don't even remember what it was. But he decided that he was going to go to my syndicator that is in Southern California, Creators Syndicate, and he was going to take a camera crew and storm the office and demand that I be fired. And he put this online and everybody could see it, and so I, of course, called my syndicator, the top man there, and I said, hey, remember that guy? Well, he's back again. Well, my boss at the Creator Syndicate called the Hermosa Beach Police Department, and they were waiting. And they were waiting, and they were waiting for days. And the cyberstalker never showed up. This is an indication for people who are maybe a new victim here, or maybe an older victim who says, oh, he makes all these terrible threats. Much of it is bluster. He never went to Creator Syndicate. The Hermosa Beach Police Department is, still waiting for him to show up there with his purported camera crew. But my worry is this. When does his bluster stop? And when does he really take action? He has proven that he's very transient. He's around the country. He's in California. He's in Iowa. He's in Missouri. He's in Virginia. He's in New York. He's all over this country. And one day, he's going to drop the bluster and he's going to act. And that's what I'm most worried about. Because I see an escalation in his communications with me. And again, my opinion, I'm not a medical professional, but I've reported on criminal activities for decades now, and this man seems to me to be someone waiting to explode. And wouldn't it be a shame that the next mass shooting or stabbing or killing has his name attached to it? Whose fault is that going to be? It's not going to be my fault. And it's not going to be the detective's fault in California, or the Ohio filmmaker, or the environmentalist that he has attacked, or the homeless advocate, or the musician up in Canada that he pesters constantly. We have tried to spread the word about this man, and law enforcement says their hands are tied. I just don't believe that. I think this cyberstalker belongs in a hospital, a mental hospital. I think he needs some serious help. And I say that from a place of compassion. I don't say that to punish him. I say that to help him. He's spent years and years doing this kind of activity, and no one has extended a hand to help him. He needs help. He wanders from state to state, picking fights with police officers and local politicians, renting houses and rooms and apartments that he then is evicted from. You don't pay your rent, that's a crime. You can be arrested for that, but he just keeps moving so that he's never in any one law enforcement jurisdiction long enough to catch, or even to serve papers for a civil suit. There's been discussion about how we all might be able to stop him, and there's just no answer. There is just no answer, and it doesn't seem fair.
Everything I, Diane Dimond, have stated in this interview is true to the best of my recollection. And I hereby state that under penalty of perjury, I am ready, willing, and able to testify in court to everything I've just said here.